All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our water saving seminars. Of course, it's my coworker talking. Damn. All right, like I was saying, welcome back to our water saving seminars. Kelsey, of course, is not here with me, obviously, tonight. But don't be alarmed, we both survived our review. So you will see her in March. But again, welcome back. We're really excited for this year of water saving seminars. This is kind of our Kelsey and I's first year of trying to redo them, revamp them, bring new speakers, bring new topics. Because while they've been good in the past, we just want to kind of liven it up. I think you guys gotten the same lectures a few times. So everything this year will be completely new unless you attend Yard Smart, which is coming up. Anybody have tickets for Yard Smart? Love it, love it. So if you're not aware, you might have to hurry up and get a ticket because sold out. Oh, already. But Yard Smart is our twice-a-year event where it's at the Brit, just in the main building. And basically this, except for it's a half day long, we have vendors, we have multiple sessions where you can pick and choose what you want to see. It's offered in English, it's offered in Spanish, and it's a really great time. We offer snacks, if that's convinces you. But again, so yeah, like I said, welcome to our water saving seminar. Tonight's class is going to be taught by some of our best friends in the water system, which is Tarrant Regional Water District, but specifically Heather Bass. And so after trivia, I'll introduce her. All right, are you all ready for trivia? Yeah. So for our newcomers to our water saving seminars, how trivia works is you kind of have to be the first to reach. Miss Folk, are they all ducks? Yes. Okay. No, somebody, you might have a poop or you might have a water little squish, but it should be a random duck, water droplet, or something in the middle of your table. In order to answer the trivia, you need to be the first in your table to grab that duck and raise it in the sky. Jaden will be watching to make sure. All right, so there's a lot of stuff in your tables. Make sure you identify where the duck is. Make sure you identify where the duck is. Thanks, Mom. All right, let me let the last few get seated so everybody has a little chance. Oh, Jaden, can you just me? There you go. Alright, has everybody identified their duck, water droplet, or poop emoji if that's out there? Yes. Okay, so today's trivia, we have our little mini tool kits. Of course, they say Fort Worth, good for potted plant gardening, maybe not your large stuff, but definitely super handy, especially if you have any of our other stuff, maybe like the bench that has a little tote on it. This will fit perfectly in it. All right, 5 trivia questions today. We have 5. Are y'all ready for number 1? Yes. All right, Jaden, are you watching? Heather, you watching along too? See who raises their hand first? Yes. All right, true or false? Are dormant plants in extreme cold or heat less likely to become dehydrated? Back there? All right. I'll give it to you guys. Yep. All right. True. This is Kelsey's explanation. So if you don't like it, wait till March to take it up with her. All right, so true. This is why it's essential to let your plants in turn actually cycle through the season. So I guess you're supposed to let them cycle. I'm not the plant expert. Ask Heather about that one.
Can you explain that? What do you mean cycle?
This is Kelsey's answer. You got March 13th again to ask her. But I guess she's trying to say that you need to let your plants cycle or go dormant and then let them come back again in the spring. All right, not the best start, but here we go. Number 2, are y'all ready? The Texas bluebonnet was declared the state flower of Texas in what year?
1842.
No, not quite that old. Not any other guesses? Not that old. You said 1842?
1802.
Very, I'll give it to you. You are super, super close. It is 1901.
You at home?
All right, Kelsey's message to you all with this one is, and they grew without any supplemental watering. So you want an easy plant? Get a Texas bluebonnet. All right, so number 3. You all ready? All right, so now you know that the state flower is a bluebonnet, but what is the state plant of Texas adopted in 1995?
Country.
That's a tree.
Over there.
Prickly pear, you are correct. Alrighty. And then again, this was defined by Texas legislator as rugged, versatile, and beautiful. All right, number 4. We all ready? All right. Also known as the devil's cigar, this rare Texas mushroom, native to Central Texas, is one of only 15 species to hiss when it opens, and it is a state mushroom. If you don't know, you'll learn it. I think Mark, you have mushrooms. No guesses?
Oh, she has one back
Oh,
there. You got a guess?
we're looking for a name of a plant. We're looking for a name of the plant. I don't know what hints to give. This is a very obvious name, too.
It has the name, it has the word Texas in the name.
So we just look.
It's a mushroom.
It's a mushroom. Yep, Texas star. So the answer was the Texas star mushroom. And again, if you didn't know the answer, we will be learning about mushrooms next month with Texas fungus. Did you teach it? All right, number 5. Number 5 and our last one before we get started. How many pounds of wildflower seeds does TxDOT sow yearly on public highways?
5,000.
Higher.
10,000.
Up.
$50.
Lower.
30.
30. Who said 30? Jada, right here. Alrighty, so just a few announcements and then I'll get out of you all's way. Alright, again, please silence your cell phones just so Heather's not interrupted. No TikToking, no FaceTimes, nothing like that. At the end, we will leave time for questions, so just make sure you jot them down. If you need a pen or paper, there's some at the table. And like I said, at the very end, Heather will answer everything. And then just a reminder is that Fort Worth residents can sign up for free toilets, free irrigation evaluations. Those are back now. And then, of course, our Smart Repair program, which is our minor plumbing repair program for low-income customers. If you ever want to see what myself, our intern, or John Michael is posting, you can follow us on Facebook at Fort Worth Water, Instagram at Save Fort Worth Water, well, Save FW Water, and we're on X at FW Water. All right, and then very nextly, so tonight's topic is Texas Tough Plants, and we have Ms. Heather Bass. She is a water conservation supervisor at Tarrant Regional Water District in Fort Worth. She has a master's in environmental and earth science and a bachelor's in biology. With a focus on conservation and restoration of natural systems, Heather has conducted research on rare Texas plant populations, sustainable landscaping practices, prairie restoration, and the effects of climate change on ecosystems. Her duties at TRWD include managing outdoor water conservation projects and increasing awareness of conservation landscaping practices. Heather enjoys gardening with native Texas plants and spending time in nature. So I'll get out y'all way, and here's Miss Heather.
Great. Thank you, Danielle. Let's see if this clicker works. Oh, there's an on-off button. Where's it at? Ah, okay. Thank you. Now let's see if it works. Still no? No? Okay. I can do it manually. That's okay. Okay. All right, so like Danielle said, I'm with TRWD, that's Tarrant Regional Water District, and so I'm going to tell you a little bit about our water supply cycle before I get started and about who TRWD is. So we are your local raw water provider. So basically what we do is we maintain the lakes that you see on this map right here, which are our surface water reservoirs, and we use these huge pipelines. They are the orange lines that you see there to pump water primarily from our lakes in East Texas back up to this area, and that's raw untreated water, and then we pump that water from our surface reservoirs to cities like Fort Worth and other cities in Tarrant County, so like Arlington, Mansfield, those type of things, all in Tarrant County. And then they take that water to their water treatment plants, and then they treat it to drinking water standards, and then the cities pump it out to all of our homes and businesses. So that is our part in the water cycle, or our water supply here in Tarrant County. And we also do flood control, so maintaining the levees around the Trinity River and all of that, and maintaining flood zones so that Fort Worth doesn't flood. And then we also do recreation, so you've probably heard of like the Trinity Trails, or maybe you've heard of Eagle Mountain Park or things like that. We have a lot of things, as parks associated with the Trinity Trails, and then also with these lakes as well, which is really actually special because there are a lot of, in our nation, a lot of our water suppliers that have these surface water reservoirs don't allow recreation or don't allow public access to those lakes. And so we're really proud that we allow people to go and boat and fish and swim and do all the wonderful things that you can do in a lake. And so I'm here today, like she said, from the Conservation Department, and conservation is for us a really important water supply strategy. It's our cheapest water supply strategy. If people just don't use the water in the first place, then we don't have to supply it. During the summertime here, you guys know how hot and dry it can get, and a lot of times 60 to 70% of our entire water use goes to just watering people's lawns during the summer. And so as you can imagine, that's a strain on our systems and a strain on Fort Worth systems and all the other cities that we provide for. And so I'm here today to talk to you about native plants and water conservation. And so Save Tarrant Water is our water conservation website where we have all of our wonderful programs that you can look at, information. We've got videos, we have classes just like this one that we do. You can look at our calendar. You can sign up for free weekly watering advice. So we maintain a whole system of weather stations all around, and those weather stations feed us data. We use that data weekly to calculate how much your lawn needs to be watered, and that's sent out to you every Monday, either through your cell phone or through your email, whichever you prefer to sign up for, and it is based on your location, so specific to your location. And then, like Danielle said, you can also sign up for a free sprinkler evaluation. So we'll send a licensed irrigator out to your house. They'll take a look at your sprinkler system, let you know how much water you're using, let you know if there's any inefficiencies that you need to fix, answer your questions, that type of thing. And so in addition to that, we don't do all of this alone. We work with plenty of other organizations, such as our customer cities like Fort Worth, but also the Native Plant Society, the Tarrant County Master Gardeners, Texas AgriLife Extension Service, and so we're all kind of working towards the same goal here in North Texas. So please go to SaveTarrantWater.com and check out more information. Okay. And now I'm going to talk to you guys about tough Texas plants. So when I say tough Texas plants, we're talking about plants that are native to this area. This area is a tall grass prairie ecosystem primarily with a mosaic of wooded areas, so, forest. Typically back in, before we were here and made a lot of modifications to our landscape, typically trees would only grow near water, right? So near like creeks or rivers and things like that. And most of the area around here would be a tall grass prairie ecosystem that was grazed by buffalo. And so when we're talking about native Texas plants, we're primarily talking about those plants that grew in that native ecosystem of indigenous origin or growth. And the reason why we like these native plants so much in terms of landscaping is because they are tolerant to the pretty harsh conditions that we have here, particularly during the summertime. They're also tolerant to the cold, like it's really cold right now. And a lot of our native plants are great at surviving the cold, but they're drought tolerant, they're heat tolerant, they don't need that much on a regular basis water. So not only are they good when it comes to drought, when it's just super, super dry, but also just on a regular basis, they don't need a lot of water for maintenance. They're fine with the rainfall that we get here. And then they're also super tolerant to the pests and diseases that are around here as well, because they've evolved with them over time. And also tolerant to our hard clay soil. Most of you have probably dug a hole before, and you know how hard our clay soil can get sometimes, particularly when it's really dry. And so these native plants are happy to live in all of that. And native plants are really awesome because they provide us with ecosystem services, and ecosystem services are basically all of the direct and indirect benefits that us humans get from the natural environment. So this is anything from, all of the food that we get, cleaning our water, carbon storage and sequestration, our air quality, flood protection, food production, like I said, recreation and tourism. We get a lot of positive mental stimulation from being out in nature, right? Like it's natural for us as humans to see greenery and be out in nature, and so it's good for our mental capacity. Everything that we have, like every single material that we have from the beginning came from some type of raw material out in nature. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about those ecosystem services that the native plants here are creating. And so, like I said, they're storing and cycling carbon. So the more vegetation is there above ground and underground, the more carbon it's sucking up from the atmosphere. So that's like the CO2 and the greenhouse gases that are, bad for us. They reduce noise pollution, increase our water and air infiltration. They pull pollutants from the water, from the soil, from the air that are being produced by all of the, cars and factories and all of that. Soak up and slow water down so we have less localized flooding, and also when that water does go into our local rivers, it's a little bit cleaner. They break up our hard clay soils and allow our soil microbes in there to grow and do their business, which is breaking down some of these complex molecules that are produced and making them into safer molecules that can be used by the plant. And then of course they support our local pollinators, and they support our local wildlife as well. And then they save water. And so that's primarily why we're talking about them today. We're encouraging you to plant them in your yard because the St. Augustine grass that is pretty typical of these areas is a tropical grass. And we do not live in a tropical area. It's very water intensive, it's very maintenance intensive, it's very chemically intensive to maintain a lawn, and these native plants are basically the opposite of that. They don't need much water, they don't need much maintenance, and they don't need any type of like fertilizer, pesticides, herbicides, all of those things that can be detrimental to our environment and to ourselves eventually in the end. One of the reasons why native plants are so awesome and the way that they do the things that they do and are so incredibly drought tolerant is that their roots are really, really long. And so you can imagine that it's when it's the middle of the summer and everything is dry, there's still soil moisture really far down into the soil. And so they can access that soil moisture. Like I said, they're also having to build those roots with something, and that is carbon. So they're pulling carbon from our atmosphere to build those roots. And I just want to point out, you've probably seen this, this little table here before, but this over here, that's grassroots. That tiny little thing right there. So that's how much roots your lawn has compared to all these wonderful prairie plants. And the grasses have more fibrous roots, so they have a lot of really tiny roots that are going out everywhere, breaking up that soil and allowing water to infiltrate down into the little, hairline fractures that they're making in the soil, so that your soil itself is keeping more water when it does finally rain. And then our flowers have more like tap roots, right, which is like a larger, big root that is going straight down. So those are all really helpful. And you can see these nice children here helping us have a little scale of how big these things are. And I believe that's big blue stem there. So I'm going to talk to you about landscaping with native plants and how you can use them in your own landscape as a built ecosystem, basically, rather than a natural ecosystem. So they really will work for any type of design aesthetic. So no matter what type of design you like or what your eyes like to see, you can use native plants to do that. You don't have to use a particular, a lot of people think that you have to have these more kind of naturalistic looking landscapes when you plant native plants. And although that can be better for some of the ecosystem services that I talked about, you don't necessarily have to have that type of look. You can have any type of look you like. You can have a more traditional landscape, but still use native plants to do that because there's such a diversity of size, color, texture, different types of flowers, all of that. We recommend that for water conservation purposes that you divide your landscape into thirds. And so 1/3 of that would be your functional turf, right? So maybe that's where your kids play or where your dog goes and uses the bathroom and runs around, things like that. Then 1/3 of that being some type of basically flower beds, right? Or native plant beds preferably. And then 1/3 of it being some type of permeable hardscape. So this could be like an outdoor living area, paths, little dry creek bed type things like rock formations, that type of thing. So something that doesn't require water, but then when it does rain, we can still get that water to soak down into the soil underneath and it doesn't just run off like it does with, concrete basically. And so that could be using pavers if you like pavers, but then leaving space in between the pavers, not like grouting it in, right, that type of thing. And it can be really used for any type of garden you want. Like I said, rain gardens are great, bioswales are awesome, pollinator gardens, you can do wildflower meadows or pocket prairies if you want something a little bit more natural and a little bit less resource intensive. You can do rainwater harvesting, you can even do some of these kind of more hip and new types of gardens, right? So you've probably heard of like cottagecore, right? So like cottage gardening is really great for native plants. You can make anything you like. And I just want to show an example of a few different types of things. So like I said, it doesn't really matter what type of aesthetic you have. You can use native plants to make those different type of aesthetics, right? And so you could have maybe something just near your house a little bit with a path like you see at the top left-hand corner, but then have some, grass further out. You could have a more cottagey type of garden where you have paths and some seating areas, maybe some garden art, things of that nature. But you can also have your more kind of like traditional flower beds that you see here. And then over here, this is more of like the pocket prairie or wildflower meadow type of thing that you can have. So like I said, it really goes for anything. And I just came back into town from a native plant conference, and they had some amazing photos of some of the landscape architects there that are very professional about their amazing plant designs. And one of the main things that they talked about was using native plants to kind of block some of the noise and air pollution and everything that's coming from the road outside your house. So depending on how busy of a road you live on or whatever. But instead of planting all your plants, right up next to your house, they might eventually grow big, right? And then those plants would block your view from your windows sometimes. Sometimes it can be better to plant them a little bit further out towards the street so you have more of like a screen from all the things that are happening, outside your house, and then your view from your window isn't blocked by anything. It's more open and you can see your lawn and then the plants as a backdrop rather than like your neighbor's cars as a backdrop or, the street as a backdrop or things like that. And so that was something that I was really inspired by. They really talked about creating rooms within your landscape so you can have different destinations within your landscape, and if you make your landscaping more like that where you push your plants a little bit further out towards your sidewalk or towards your street, you can have sort of an ante-room before you get into your house basically, right? So I thought that was a really interesting take on some of the landscaping design or whatever. So one of the main problems that people have is finding native plants and like where to buy them. So I'm going to talk briefly about that. We do have a list of local nurseries on our website at savetarrantwater.com/pollinator. You can go there and take a look at our extensive list. There's also coming up soon, since spring is coming up, there will be local plant sales. So the Botanic Gardens does a plant sale. They will offer native plants at their plant sale. The Native Plant Society will have plant sales where they will offer some native plants, and that's where you can get some of the more interesting or like more rare native plants for your garden. Some of the nurseries will have kind of the same set of native plants, and so if you're looking for something a little bit more interesting or you're looking for something in particular, like I want, a white flower that blooms in fall or whatever, that type of thing, that's something that you can find more at some of these local sales. We recommend planting seeds typically only if you're doing like a wildflower meadow or something like that. So typically you will use seeds for an annual plant, right? So a plant that dies every year and comes back from seed every year. If you're planting perennial plants that are ones that go dormant every year during the fall and winter but then come back, then you're probably going to want to plant, an actual plant. But if you are looking for seeds, Native American seed is great. They have our local ecotypes of seeds, and that's really important because, like I said, this is a prairie ecosystem, and this ecosystem stretches all the way up, into the center of the United States. Some of these plants that I'm going to talk about today are native to here, but then also native to places in Canada, for instance. But you can imagine that the genetics of those plants are going to be different, and so Native American seed is really great because they have the local genetics that will work well with our types of soil, with our conditions that we have here. Wildflower.org is the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. It's an amazing resource. They have they have an entire, just dictionary basically of all the different native plants that are around. And then they also have specific lists. So let's say you want to attract hummingbirds to your yard, right? They have a full list that is like, here are all the native plants that hummingbirds like. They have one for butterflies. They have one for our native bees, different things. So if you're looking for a certain set of plants, that's a great resource. If you're in the store and you see a plant and you're not sure if it's native or not, you can always look it up on our USDA plants database. So you just look up USDA plants online. You can type in any plant you like and it'll come up with a map of the United States. And it'll show the state of Texas in green if it's native to the state of Texas. If you're looking even more, if you want to be more specific, you can zoom into that map and see that it's native to Tarrant County. But typically we just go with plants that are native to Texas. Most of the time they're pretty good. Some of our East Texas plants obviously like a little bit more water, right, than some of the plants from here, but it's a great website. And then waterisawesome.com also has a great list of native plants that it's a slightly more reduced list, whereas, if you go look at wildflower.org, there's like every native plant that exists in Texas basically, and maybe you don't want to look through thousands of plants, or maybe some of those plants you won't be able to find seeds for, you won't be able to find in your local nurseries, and so waterisawesome.com has a great reduced list of plants that we know are available in our local nurseries. And I just want to call out There's a few nurseries that are really great within Tarrant County that specialize in native plants, and so I'll call out just a few of those. Weston Gardens is great. Eco Blossom Nursery. There's a few new ones that just started. So there's one called Native Gardeners. There's one called Nativo Gardens that just started, and so those are all here in Tarrant County and offer like primarily native plants. So you can go there and look around, and 90% of what they have is native, and so you don't have to do so much work, maybe like looking things up. You can find native plants sometimes at your like big box stores or your larger nurseries and things like that. It just might take a little bit more hunting, or maybe they might have them one time of the year and not another time of the year. Always look at your plant tags. There's like the Texas Superstar program, so if you see something that says, Texas Superstars, that's often a native plant or a native bar. That is specifically tagged, and so there are a few different things that you can do to make sure that you're getting native plants.
Do you have lists of those?
I do. It's on the website on safetarrantwater.com/pollinator, or you can go to safetarrantwater.com and just the little drop-down menu. It'll say like native plants, and just click on the native plant thing, and we have a whole list of ones that are in this area. Yeah.
No,
And then
nurseries.
Nurseries, yes, nurseries. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the Native Plant Society, you can also go to their website, and they have a list of their nice nurseries is what they call it, and those are also nurseries, and they have it broken down into two different lists, where it's nurseries that specialize in native plants and then nurseries that don't specialize in native plants but carry native plants sometimes of the year. And lately, for the past few years, HEB has begun to carry native plants as well. And so you might be able to find some at HEB. Look for some of that advertising coming like probably in a month or so during the spring. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how you might want to plant a native plant once you get it. It's really pretty much the easiest, planting method. But I'll go through it anyway. So you're definitely, first, you're going to want to clear all of your unwanted vegetation, particularly any aggressive stuff. So if you have Bermuda grass or some type of aggressive weeds or something like that, you're going to want to make sure that all of those are cleared out before you put your plants in. St. Augustine is usually pretty easy to clear, but if you have turf that you're clearing out, you can just get like a flathead shovel or something like that, drive it under those roots. You saw how shallow the roots were for those grasses, right? So just go down a few inches and just scrape off the top, basically. Some of our weeds might have a taproot that goes a little bit further down. You might have to hand pull that type of thing, but you just want to make sure that your area is clear, so that you don't have to do as much weeding in the future when you do plant your plants, right? You can till the soil if you want, but it's super optional. Depending on what your area looks like, if you have a lot of weeds in that area that you had to pull, tilling could be detrimental, because tilling could be exposing some of those weed seeds to the atmosphere and to the sun, and then making them want to grow. And so it's definitely not necessary. Depending also on your soil, if you have super compact clay soil, and you go in and you till, you will have a really compact bottom layer and then a more fluffy upper layer, and it will discourage the roots from going deeper, right? Because they have this fluffy area up top and then this hard area at the bottom, and they're like, oh, I'd rather grow out into the easy soil rather than grow down into that harder clay soil, but we want them to grow down into the harder clay soil. So tilling, completely optional, but it can be good sometimes. It can also be detrimental. You can add compost as well, organic compost. This is also optional. Native plants will enrich your soil. You don't have to do it the opposite way. So you don't need to enrich your soil for native plants. They do that. Their roots are doing that. Their roots are making symbiotic relationships with the microbes in the soil, and they will begin to break down your soil, and they will begin to break down organic matter and make your soil lush and nice. If you feel like you just completely have nothing but super hard clay, or if for some reason you live in a sandy area, we do have a few just kind of like strips of sandy soil in certain neighborhoods. You could add organic matter, but again, this is completely optional and not something that needs to happen. Organic matter, organic compost can help your soil retain a little bit more of that water once it does get some rain, and so it can be helpful for that. And it can also, jumpstart some of those microbial processes that are happening to make some of the soil nutrients more bioavailable to your native plants. But typically, native plants don't need a lot of that. They don't need a lot of nitrogen, and what really likes nitrogen is weeds. And so you don't want to necessarily jumpstart that a whole lot, because it's going to be more helpful towards weed growth than towards the growth of your native plants. So native plants like more carbon in the soil, whereas most of your weeds are happier to have nitrogen in the soil. So you want to dig your holes for plants. This is just like any other plant. You want to dig it basically at the same depth, so that the top of whatever you're planting is level with the top of your soil. But then you want to make it your hole a little bit wider, right? So kind of make it double as wide as whatever your pot is. Place the plants in the soil. You want to loosen the roots up and create soil contact. So make sure, if let's say you buy a plant and it's root bound, right, where you see the roots at the bottom of the pot, you want to loosen those up a little bit. You can even cut them a little bit if you want. It's not going to hurt them. That just makes them know that they're ready to grow out, right, and there's not that pot there anymore, and they're happy to go out. Once you put them all down in there, tamp down your soil, make sure you have good contact from your roots to your new soil, and then basically you gotta water them in. Cycle and soak is always the best method. So like I said, sometimes our clay soils, especially if they're dry, they can be a little bit resistant to soaking up water at first, right? So if you're seeing the water begin to puddle up at the top, just stop watering for a little bit, let it infiltrate in, and then come back in and water some more. You're definitely going to want to put some mulch on top. The mulch is really helpful because it will eventually break down over time and add that organic matter to your soil, and add some of that carbon so that the microbes can begin to break that down and make that available to your plants. In addition to that, it is going to keep your water in. It's going to make your soil temperatures a whole lot lower if you do have direct sunlight coming down on that soil particularly. And it is going to inhibit your weed growth. So particularly if you like the type of landscaping look where there is a plant and then there's a lot of just kind of bare ground or mulch in between, and the plants aren't touching each other or anything, you're going to have some weeds wanting to grow, right? Because they're getting sunlight. And so you want to put that mulch on there, and a pretty thick layer, to make those weeds inhibited, and so that the top of the soil does not get any of that sunlight. If you plant your plants a little bit closer together, where eventually when they're larger they are shading the entire soil surface in between them, that's going to be way better, and eventually in the future you're not going to have to weed anymore at all, because there's no light getting down to that soil at that point in time. But Texas hardwood mulch, native mulch, is going to be your best option. Some of these other mulches that you see that are dyed mulches, they do not break down very well, and so you want your mulch to break down. You want it to, you'll have to mulch year after year basically. You want it to break down every year and add that organic matter to your soil to help your soil continue to be enriched. And then after you put your mulch on, you're going to water again and make sure that that whole mulch layer gets completely wet all the way down to the soil. Once you've planted your native plants, your maintenance is really not that much after they're established, right? So you're going to make sure that they're established, water deep daily for the first 2 weeks or so, depending on what time of year it is. I mean, like if it's still cooler outside and if we're still getting rain and things like that, and your soil is staying damp, you do not need to continue to water. You want it to dry out a little bit in between your waterings, right? So not like completely dry, but definitely let it dry out, and then come back and water more for the first 2 weeks or so, just to make sure that your new plants aren't going into shock and they are, getting acquainted to their new area. Then you're going to water deeply again for about 2 times a week for the next month or so. That could be extended if you're planting at the end of spring and you're getting into summertime, where we're getting these really hot temperatures and things like that. You might need to extend that a little bit, but for the most part, after about a month or so, your plants should be established enough where they can start, pretty much taking care of themselves and taking care of themselves from whatever the rainfall is. You might need to water them a little bit over the summer for the first summer. Like I said, particularly if you planted them at the end of spring, closer to summertime, and they're instantly getting hit with those 100-degree days and 0 rainfall days, that type of thing. But pretty much at that point, your plants should be pretty established, and you can move to a regular watering schedule or just not water them at all. So depending on what season it is, really native plants only need to be watered during the summertime. Most of the time, once they're established for 2 years or so, you really don't have to water them at all in the summer if you don't want to, but watering in the summer can keep them blooming a little bit longer, keep them looking green a little bit longer, and keep them looking nice. When it comes to maintenance, really the only thing that you need to do is, if you have perennial plants, you're going to want to prune away all of that dead growth at typically the end of February. So we always say, definitely after Valentine's Day, but you have to go with the weather. Like right now, it's still pretty cold. Valentine's Day is tomorrow? And it's still pretty cold outside. We have gotten a little bit of warm temperatures, but you want to wait as long as you possibly can, because all of that growth from last year that right now is dead at the top of the soil is all where our native pollinators are overwintering in right now, right? So they're putting their babies in there. Maybe there's some cocoons down in your leaves. They use the hollow reeds or the hollow stems, right, to put their eggs down in. And so if you cut all that away before it heats up enough for them to hatch, you're basically just taking all your pollinators away and killing all of your pollinators. And so it's really important to leave that all there. It can look a little messy sometimes, but leave it for as long as you possibly can. In the springtime, if you start to see your plants growing up green again from the bottom, okay, now it's time to go ahead and cut all that dead growth off. You can remove that dead growth. If you're still concerned about the pollinators or concerned about the other wildlife and things like that, you can put it, over to the side, put it in your compost pile, something like that. So if there is still anything waiting to hatch, it can still hatch out and everything. You can also prune if you want in the late summer. Some people do that when it gets really hot and dry. The natural reaction to our native plants is to quit producing, green leaves, because that's doing evapotranspiration, right? And that's making them lose water basically at a time when they don't want to be losing water. And so you can start getting, browning, particularly on your plants that are spring blooming plants. And so if you want to extend your blooming period, if you want to make it look a little bit nicer during the summertime when things are looking kind of brown and sad, you can prune also during the late summer if you prefer to do that. And then you're always going to need to weed, particularly during establishment. Like I said, if you have your plants planted close enough to where when they get mature sized, you're not getting any sun on the soil, then you can usually not have to do much weeding after your first year or two or whatever. But you've got to do intense weeding at the beginning and make sure you put your mulch layer on so that you're not having weeds take over at that beginning stage when you rustled up the soil or whatever. And then you're going to just apply mulch again each year. So you'll see once your mulch starts breaking down, you'll be able to see that, and you can apply mulch again. So a lot of times what I will do is I will cut down my all my last year's growth, maybe right at the beginning of March, so maybe the first week of March, and then I'll come in with some mulch at the beginning of March when there's nothing there, because it's easiest to mulch right when there's pretty much nothing there, right? When there's already plants there, you kind of got to go around them and stuff if you're mulching in the fall time. You can mulch really anytime you want, but I like to mulch in the spring just because it's easier. So continue to mulch every year. You don't need to fertilize. You don't need to apply pesticides. those just aren't needed for native plants. They are happy to, like I said, use their, microbial symbiotic relationships to create the soil nutrients that they need. Fertilizing typically just encourages weed growth, particularly, like I said, with that nitrogen. If you're adding nitrogen to the soil, since we live in an urban area and we have tons of air pollution, we're getting we're getting nitrogen deposition already into our soils from the air pollution in the atmosphere. So you really don't need to add any nitrogen. And then, of course, pesticides will kill pollinators, and we don't want to do that. So no pesticides are needed whatsoever. And this is what I was talking about, watering after establishment. So this little table here shows the calculations based on 20. So when a plant is evapotranspirating, so when a plant is, losing water through its leaves that are, evaporating out into the atmosphere when it's hot outside, this is based on adding back 20% of what is evaporating out. So we've taken the amount of water that is coming out of the plants whenever they're growing, and then subtracted rainfall, right? So this is based on what our average rainfall is. So if we have below average rainfall, you might have to water more than this, but this is for average rainfall, and then looking at adding 20% of that back. And so this is how many inches per week your native plants need to be watered. Like I said, if you don't mind the slightly browner plants or so, they don't really need to be watered at all. There are a few native plants that are a little bit more sensitive and can maybe die during the summer, but for the most part, your plants will do their own kind of dormancy and begin to get dormant at the end of summer when it's super hot and super dry. But if you don't want that to happen, if you want them to stay green, if you want them to keep blooming, you can go ahead and water them a little bit to give them a little bit of something during the summertime. But for the most part, these other seasons, you don't need to water them. Sometimes we do have where it stays pretty hot during the fall time, right? Particularly the beginning of fall. And sometimes we don't get any rain during the fall. And so you might have to keep watering, extend that summertime watering schedule. But hopefully by October, it starts to cool down, we start to get rain and things like that, and you won't need to water during that time. Always 2 times a week maximum. We've got our 2 times a week maximum watering restrictions. If you live in the city of Fort Worth, and if you live in many other cities, always make sure that you're watering between 6 p.m. and 10 a.m. Don't water during the middle of the day, particularly, during the summertime. And again, with the cycling and soaking, with our clay soils, they need time to let that water soak in, especially if they've been dry. If they've been dry for a little while, it takes some time to be rehydrated. And so you're going to want to make sure that you are watering a little bit, letting it sit for an hour or so, then watering a little bit more, letting it sit, watering a little bit more to let that water go down. And of course, if it's super droughty, you might need to water a little bit more. If it just rained, don't water. All right, so that is pretty much all about, planting your native plants, maintaining your native plants. And now I'm just going to talk to you about some of my favorite native plants that I love growing in my suburban landscape. And these are also plants that are super easy to grow. I mean, you basically can't kill them unless you overwater them. And then these are also ones that you can typically easily get in our local nurseries. So I'm not going to tell you today about any weird, obscure native plants that you'll never be able to find or anything like that. So Mealy Blue Sage is a really good one. It's beautiful. You can get quite a few different varieties of it. So you can get our more native one that grows a little bit taller, maybe 3 feet tall or so. But you can also get smaller dwarf varieties that are a little bit shorter and a little bit more compact. You'll see the name Henry Dulberg sometimes, and so that is kind of like a certain variety of it. Those typically will have like a brighter purple flower, and the little sheath around the flower will stay purple as well, whereas some of the other ones have like a more, grayish, greenish or whatever sheath around the flower. They love full sun. They literally will spread and need no care whatsoever once they're established. You can get it in white too if you like the white look as well. And our butterflies absolutely love these. Monarchs love it. But they are a great plant because they will attract our larger butterflies like monarchs and swallowtails, but then they'll also attract our bumblebees and carpenter bees and then some of the smaller butterflies. Whereas some of these plants, the larger butterflies prefer one and the smaller butterflies prefer another. But this one is really kind of like a jack of all trades type of thing where it will attract many different types of pollinators. And you can pretty much find it in any, most of our nurseries, particularly our more native nurseries. So this is always my number one plant that I recommend to people in terms of native plants because you can't go wrong with the salvia. And it smells good too. It has a sage smell, right, because it's a salvia. And it also has a really long bloom time. So this one will begin blooming typically around April or so, and then it'll bloom all the way until the first freeze. So you can get a ton of bloom time out of this. And this is another one where if you want to extend the blooms, if you want to extend the bloom time, you can prune the old ones, right? Deadheading is what some people call it. So prune some of those old deadheads off and water a little bit more and you'll get, a new revitalized bloom come.
How does that compare to the salvia gregae?
So Salvia gregae, I think I might have it in here, but Salvia gregae is what we call autumn sage. Even though it's called autumn sage, it also has a pretty long bloom time, but it has smaller flowers, and it's more kind of a small shrubby appearance, and the flowers aren't as showy and aren't as numerous. But I would say Salvia gregae is a little bit more drought tolerant and a little bit more happy to be in our super hot, super dry areas. So if you have, certain areas of your yard that are really hot and really dry, like what a lot of people call the hell strip, which is that strip of land between the sidewalk and the street, Salvia gregae can be a great option for that area. Mm-hmm. Zexmania or Wedelia is a great one. It's another one that needs like zero irrigation. It will make tons of these tiny little yellow flowers. I say tiny, they're like an inch across or so. Small butterflies love them. This creates like a low mounding kind of shrub type look. Very hardy. It spreads pretty easily by seed, so you'll start getting babies if you want. One thing about this one is it is kind of hairy on the leaves and on the stems. So when you are pruning this one, make sure you're wearing gloves because if you just run your hand up the stem or something like that, it will definitely cut you. So, but this is a beautiful one. Like I said, our smaller butterflies and our smaller native bees really love this one. And it has that classic, yellow daisy type look.
Is that a full sun?
Yes, that is full sun. So most of these that I'm going to talk about today are full sun because, like I said, these are all from a prairie ecosystem. And so you can imagine in a prairie ecosystem, everything pretty much gets full sun. But I will talk about a few that are for shade. Greg's Mistflower is awesome. There's also Blue Mistflower. They both look really similar. The only difference is their leaves look a bit different. So the Greg's Mistflower is going to have a kind of a limer green type of leaf, and the Blue Mistflower has a regular green type of leaf and kind of looks more like a mint leaf or something like that. But these butterflies love these. If you want butterflies to come to your yard, and I'm not talking like 3 butterflies, I'm talking hundreds of butterflies in like 100 square foot area, this is the plant you need to get. Our queen butterflies need this plant to make their sexual pheromones, and so you'll see tons of queen butterflies coming to this. The monarchs absolutely love it. It's got a pretty flower. It blooms for a good portion of the year. The only thing about this one is that it will spread, particularly the Blue Mistflower. The Blue Mistflower is really aggressive in its spreading. So you just want to make sure that you're putting this in an area where either you don't mind it spreading or it's contained by something, right? And that could be even just I have this growing in non-lined flower beds where I have St. Augustine right up against it. It will not encroach on your St. Augustine or anything like that. but it will spread, definitely. And that can be good. Like, you can go to the store and buy just 3 plants of this and plant it, and by, 2 years from now, it can fill an entire area. So if you want to be, more cost effective, spreading can be a great thing. The blue mist flower also will, here, I've got a slide on blue mist flower. So here's the kind of difference in blue mist flower. It has a slightly darker leaf and a slightly darker flower, but it will root in water. So it spreads via its below ground roots, and you can literally just pull it up. You'll have the roots right there. You can put it in water and give it to your friends or whatever. But like I said, butterflies absolutely love this one. If you want butterflies and there's just one plant you want to plant in your yard, this is definitely the butterfly plant to plant. Cutleaf daisy or Engelmann's daisy. So this is another kind of like yellow daisy type of looking thing. Yeah, did you have a question there?
I have a question.
Yeah.
If the blue mist flower blooms in water, does it attract snakes?
No, I wouldn't say any of these necessarily attract snakes, no. What I mean by it blooming in water is like you can root it in water. So you know how some plants you can do a cutting and then put it in water and it will create roots? Some plants you can't do cuttings of, so some plants will not root in water no matter what you do, but blue mist flower will definitely root in water if you want to do cuttings. So that's what I meant by that. The Engelmann's daisy is another, like I said, another nice little daisy look. This one's different because it has like a rosette at the bottom, so when it's not blooming, it has this compact little rosette that is only about 6 inches to a foot kind of tall at the bottom, and then once it does bloom, it'll create a stalk that is, 3 feet high or so, and then once it's done blooming, you can cut that stalk away and still have your little compact rosette. So if that's the type of look that you're looking for, this is a really good one. Again, the small butterflies love it, and our bees absolutely love it, and it's super hardy. Needs very little water, very little care. Most of the ones I'm going to talk about today, you're going to hear that because most of these native plants don't really need any care once you get them going.
When does it bloom?
This one will bloom typically just like during the beginning of summer. So right at the end of spring and the beginning of summer. This one doesn't have as extended of a bloom time as the other plants that I've talked about so far. The other ones that I've talked about so far pretty much will bloom your entire non-freezing portion of the year. This one will it shoots up those stalks, it blooms once, and then once it's done, and it goes back to its little rosette. And that's what the rosette looks like there at the bottom, just like a little clump. Purple coneflower, purple prairie clover is one of my favorites. It's really interesting in the way that it grows. It kind of creates this, bushy kind of clump. It's about, 2 to 3 feet tall. And the bees absolutely love it. So if you're looking for something that attracts and supports bees, this is definitely a good one. You can also find this in white. So if you prefer it in white, it's great. This is in the pea family. So this will do a lot for your soil. Pea family typically will, add some of those nutrients to your soil. So this one can be something that you can plant with your other native plants that will help your soil health and help other plants around it be healthy because it's helping with the soil. And again, needs very little water or care, but I really love this one. So yes, you're talking about and it's roots. Yeah, definitely. So most of the things in your pea family will have these kind of nodules on the roots where you're having symbiotic bacteria that is going into the root and creating a home basically in the root, and it's fixing nitrogen for the other plants. So taking nitrogen from the atmosphere, breaking it down into nitrates and nitrites, which are more usable for your other plants. Purple coneflower is a beautiful one. This is a super typical plant. You can find this in a lot of nurseries. It's absolutely beautiful. It has that more kind of classic flower garden look, right? Where you've got these beautiful giant coneflower type things. Bees love it. Your larger butterflies like your swallowtails or your monarchs will definitely be attracted to this. Echinacea, many of you have probably heard of it as a medicinal herb, right? So this is medicinal. You can make tea out of it, that type of thing. It has also kind of these ground clumps, and then it'll shoot up your flowers. This is one that you can definitely, once the flowers themselves are dead, you can deadhead it and it will shoot up with more flowers. I've also seen where some landscape architects will design landscapes or design gardens to look good during the winter time when everything is dead. And this is one that they'll use a lot because the flowers will just keep their form, but then basically just not be purple anymore. So you still have this kind of interesting looking thing even when it's not in its growing time. So that's kind of an interesting tidbit. And they also, you'll see, if you start growing them a lot, you'll start seeing some of them that have kind of like deformed middles, and it's really interesting where you'll start getting these, you know, like elongated middles sometimes or things like that. So this is an interesting plant. I think it's interesting. You can also get this in a lot of different colors. You can see it, you know, at your local whatever, big box nursery, that type of thing. You'll see it in white, see it in yellow, see it in red, those type of things. Typically, those are still drought tolerant, but might not attract pollinators in the same way that our native ones will. And so you'll see that often where nurseries or grow companies will take some of our native plants and make what are called native Rs, where they're taking a native plant and maybe changing it a little bit to make it to do different things, right? So maybe make a dwarf variety or make it have a different color bloom or perhaps make more blooms or something like that. And most of the time those plants are still drought tolerant. The only thing is that sometimes they don't provide for our pollinators. And so you can imagine, you know, like if you take a horse and breed it with a donkey, you get a mule, right? But like mules then are not sexually active at that point. That you can't breed mules together, right? And so the same thing happens with flowers. They will crossbreed flowers, but then those flowers might not even make pollen or they might not even make nectar. And so you have these beautiful flowers, but then the pollinators, to them, they're like, this is nothing for me because there's no nectar in this flower, you know, that type of thing. Also, some of these, you know, some pollinators are particularly love a certain type of flower, right? So they might, for instance, hummingbirds really like red flowers. So if you get a flower that's supposed to be red, but then you buy the yellow version, you know, it might not attract the hummingbirds in the same way because they're kind of blind to that flower at that point in time because they like it red, that type of thing. Yarrow is another good one. This is another one that will spread pretty easily. It has an interesting leaf where it kind of has like a fern type of look to the leaf, which is nice if you like that type of thing, a darker green, more dainty type of thing. And it's the same where it, same as some of the other ones I've talked about, where it creates more of like a clump at the bottom that kind of has these interesting fern-like leaves, and then when it blooms, it'll shoot up a bloom that looks like this. There's white and there's yellow. Both of those are native, so you don't have to worry about the pollinators, you know, not being attracted to the yellow one or whatever. I'm talking about the white one here. A bunch of the tiny little flowers. You've probably seen these in flower bouquets before, right? Where they'll accent it with these small little white flowers. And so if you're wanting to go for like a cut flower garden, this is a great option if you're making your own little bouquets, that type of thing. Here's our Salvia gregia that we were talking about earlier. Like I said, this is it's very drought tolerant. So if you have an area where maybe you're wanting to create a rock garden, or it's right next to some concrete or something like that, this one can handle that reflective heat. So, you know, during the summertime, sometimes the sun will reflect off of concrete onto plants and can just absolutely burn them because they're getting, you know, just a beam of the worst sunlight ever and really, really hot. And this one's one of the ones that can withstand that type of thing. So it can be perfect to use in those situations. It comes in a lot of different colors, and naturally, again, this is one that you can get in a variety of colors and it won't mess with the pollinators or anything. So you can get This is the red one, but you can get it in a kind of pink fuchsia type color, and then you also see it in white often. It's small and shrubby, so it creates a little small shrub type thing, and this is one that really just hates water. I mean, this is one of the plants where some of these plants that I've talked about today, like for instance the purple coneflower, if you water it a little bit more, you'll get more blooms. This one, if you water it more, it will die. So some of these are definitely just your happy little drought tolerant plants. Yeah, did you have a question?
Yes, are other species in the salvia, are they also native?
There are some other native salvias. Yes, there are actually quite a few. So I would recommend going to wildflower.org and definitely just typing in salvia, and you can see we have, I mean, probably 100 native salvias. Yeah. There's a red salvia that you will see a lot in, you know, nurseries and garden centers and things like that. That is pretty common that people like to plant in their yards as well. Snake herb is a fun little one if you want something that's kind of a lower ground cover type thing. So this one is shade tolerant. You can see here it's growing in dappled shade. So if you have an area that is maybe too shady for other plants to grow, or if, like I said, if you like the more low ground cover look, this is a perfect one. It will usually be about like 3 or 4 inches tall or so, and then it creates these tiny little beautiful purple flowers that will grow up and down the stalk there. It's really low water use, and it's another one that will spread pretty easily, but not be aggressive necessarily, so it won't really like spread into other things and take over. But if you want it to be a ground cover, you know, you can plant a few sprigs like a foot away from each other or so, and within a few years that will fill into a nice little ground cover area. And it will kind of, you can see it doing it here over the rocks, it will spill over too. So if you like that type of look where something is, you know, spilling over the, like the edge of a terrace or something like that, this is a great plant for that.
Did you say it was shade tolerant?
Yeah, this one will tolerate dappled shade.
Like 6 hours under a tree or no?
It matters how thick the tree is, so it needs to have a little bit of sunlight, so you can kind of see in this, the shade needs to be, that's what you call dappled, right, where you're getting some sunlight through it. If it's completely thick, like no sunlight whatsoever, this one might have a hard time. Sundrops are really beautiful. This is one that instead of an extended bloom period, you will really have just this one big explosion of just hundreds of blooms. And it looks really beautiful when it's happening. This is another one that is pretty low growing and will create, you know, kind of a ground cover type thing. This one needs full sun though. This one likes it sunny. And then right at the beginning of spring, it will just create a beautiful explosion of blooms. You get all these awesome yellow blooms, and then after that, it'll look like kind of just a little ground cover, like you can see in the picture to your right. Like I said, super low water use. It likes it hot. This is another great one if you have a rock garden or a hill strip or something like that. This is a perfect one for it. This is another one too that will die if you overwater it. So it has like a more kind of tough little leaf that is just a little, you know, a little line. It's not a very like flat type of leaf, and so it's the type of plant that likes it hot and likes it dry. On the other hand, we've got wine cups, and they are very similar in that they will vine over the ground and create this beautiful ground cover. They will also have this explosion of blooms right at the beginning of the spring. But wine cup needs a little bit of irrigation. It will a lot of times kind of, when we have, let's say, a wet spring and everything's looking good during the spring, it will overexert itself and it will vine out to a huge area, and then once it hits where it's really hot and it's really dry, you'll start to see it die back a little bit because it can't handle the heat and it can't handle the dry. But it has these beautiful blooms, little wine cup blooms. And like I said, it kind of happens all at the same time. This one's a really cool one because its pollen is white. And so you'll see if you watch your pollinators in your garden, you'll see the bees that have been into the wine cup because they have white pollen all over them instead of the yellow pollen. And so they look like they've been in like the snow or something like that. But this is another one that's a great ground cover.
Sorry, were those shade tolerant or?
Again, with the dappled shade, they can take a little bit of shade, but I would not put them in like deep shade. Definitely. So moonflower is a really fun one. This one blooms at night, and it's super drought tolerant. It will grow really easily from seed. So if you want to buy this one as seed and just throw the seed out in your gardens, you'll begin to get some. These flowers are huge, so they will be about this long and about this big once they bloom. Great, moths love them, bats love them, right? You'll see the bees coming to them in the early morning, and then as soon as the direct sunlight hits them, they're going to shrivel away and go. So this is something that creates one bloom for one day, one night basically, and then that bloom goes away, and you can see it, you'll see it coming. It's this beautiful kind of like curled up thing that you'll see, and you'll see it maybe for 2 days before it pops up, and then it'll pop up as soon as the sun goes down that day. Get this beautiful huge bloom, and then it will go away by the time the sun comes. This is a great one to plant. Like if you have an area where it's up next to your house and your house shades that area during the morning time a little bit, this is a great one because then you don't have to be out at night to necessarily see it. You can go out in the early morning when it's still shaded and your flowers will still be there. And you can see, like I said, a lot of the bees and everything visiting them, and they're really interesting. They're this beautiful trumpet-shaped flower. Some people will call them angel trumpets. That's another name for them. They are hallucinogenic, so don't eat it.
About the moonflower.
Yeah.
Is this one you do not grow if you raise tomatoes?
No, this is the one you want to grow if you raise tomatoes. So this is in the same family, the nightshade family. And so if you want to grow this next to your tomatoes, it will attract those hornworms so they don't go on your tomatoes. So I have these in my tomato patch, and they grow right there next to the tomatoes, and the hornworms will come and attack it, and it'll be completely fine, and my tomatoes are safe from the horrible hornworm infestations. But I mean, the hornworms, I try to love them as much as I can because they become beautiful sphinx moths, right? So they will become moths, and you will see those moths at night, going to these flowers and everything. But yeah, these are great to plant in your tomato patch. Yeah, good point. Yeah, back in that.
And they smell great.
Yeah, they do. They smell really good. And it's just, with our drought tolerant plants, we don't get a lot of huge flowers, right? Because you're thinking if you're a plant and you want to be drought tolerant, why would you make a giant flower? That's really vulnerable. And so these have these giant, beautiful white flowers. It can be amazing. And if you're trying to create a type of garden that is like a nighttime garden or like a gothic garden or something like that, this is a great addition. And they're so drought tolerant. And they'll get huge. These things will get really big, and it's crazy because, during the time when it's cold outside like now, they will completely die down to just their roots under the ground, and you'll cut that whole thing down and there'll be nothing there. And then as soon as the growing season starts, maybe 2 months into it, already you have a giant, bush again. My largest one is probably like 3.5, 4 feet tall, and another 4 feet wide or so. So, yeah, these are definitely, they will get big if you let them get big. But you can prune it, and it takes pruning. If you don't want it to get big, just cut it back. It's completely fine with whatever you want. This is also one that it doesn't bloom constantly throughout the year. It will bloom a whole lot after rain. So you'll get a big rain, and then let's say a week later, you'll have, 50 of these flowers all together blooming on one night or like succession, for a week or something like that. And then it won't bloom again for a little while it's droughty or while it's not raining. Lantana is a classic. We've probably all heard of lantana. So our native one is this lantana urticoides. And so if you see the flowers that are a continuum from orange to yellow, those are going to be your native ones. This is another one that you will find it in the store in every color that you can possibly think of. You can get it solid yellow, you can get it pink, you can get it purple, you can get it white. And so all of those will be super drought tolerant, but they might not attract as many pollinators as your native one will. And so a lot of times you'll also see these where they'll have the yellow and the orange, but they'll also have some pink in there. That's not our native one, but again, super hardy, super drought tolerant. Pollinators love it. Hummingbirds love these. The larger butterflies love these, and then once the flower is gone, it creates berries, and our songbirds love to come eat the berries. So if you're looking for something that will attract birds, this is a great one for birds as well. And this is more of like a bushy type thing, right? So it'll create kind of a lower mounding bush. Yeah.
If we want to get the native, we have to make sure it says that urticoid.
Yeah, definitely. Or you're just looking at the flower and making sure that it only has that yellow to orange continuum, basically. Yeah. Make sure there's no pink.
Is this one you trim down in March?
Yes, this is one that you can
Because
trim
that
down.
one doesn't look good right now, it's cold.
Yeah,
But I left the leaves on, so trim it down in March.
yes, you can trim it down. This one gets a little bit more woody on the stems, right? And so if you want, you can just kind of prune it down to where you still have those stems there and leave the woody stems, or you can just prune it all the way down to the ground and it will come back up. So either one that you like to do. And you can tell too when you're trimming these things, right? If you cut into a stem and it's still green in there and it still looks alive, like, okay, leave a little bit of that stem, but if you cut into it and it's all brown and it's dead seeming, then you can just go ahead and cut it on down.
What does it get?
Low water.
How tall?
What was that?
How tall?
Oh, how tall? Probably about, at maximum, maybe like 2 to 3 feet tall or something like that. So not a really tall shrub, a lower shrub. Turk's cap is a really good one. One reason why I love Turk's cap is that it will take full sun or full shade. Whichever you want to give it, it doesn't matter, it will take it. It likes to grow under other trees. This one will get big. So we have them on a TRWD campus, and these are cut completely down to the ground at the beginning of March or the end of February every single year, and they get 7 to 8 feet tall easy, and good 4 foot wide or so. They have these beautiful red flowers. This one's great for hummingbirds. If you're looking to attract hummingbirds, this is definitely the plant. They also create these little fruits on them that look like tiny little green apples, and they pretty much taste like tiny little green apples. So that's an edible fruit that you can have there in your yard, and these things will, particularly if you water them and if they're in full sun, they will create just tons of flowers all throughout the year. We'll have these things blooming on our TRWD campus well into December. So as you know, typically we don't get that far below freezing during December yet, and so you will get these blooms throughout, the whole blooming season. Texas sage is a beautiful one. Most of us have probably heard of Texas sage as well. Sometimes people call this barometer bush, and the reason why they call it that is because rather than blooming on a certain season, like most flowers do, this one blooms after the rain. So it has this beautiful little kind of grayish green, tiny fuzzy leaves. You can create any type of bush you want with it. It will take pruning if you want to prune it. If you don't want to prune it, that's completely fine too. These will get pretty big, 7 to 8 feet tall, again, if you want to let it get that way. And then after it rains, you just get this explosion of blooms. And you can get them also, there's a variety that has a slightly less gray leaf. But I really like the gray look of the leaves because it gives you a kind of a different colored green, right? And a different texture in your garden. Yeah, back and back.
And
mature Texas sage be transplanted? If you take it out and move it?
Yeah, you definitely can. I mean, it depends on how mature it is probably, and if you get all of its roots. But most of these plants, particularly if you transplant them when, like during the winter time when they're more dormant, they take transplanting. Yes. Just make sure you get as much of the roots out of there as you possibly can.
Is there a way to propagate that, or do you have to dig up the whole thing? I have one that's not growing well because everything is growing in front of it.
Oh, I'm not sure if you can propagate it from cuttings or not, but they typically will grow pretty easily from seed. So if you just want to wait till it blooms and then wait till the seed sets, get the seed off of it, most of the time when you have a mature one for quite a few years, you'll start to see babies just growing on their own, around it. And so you might wait for some of those babies to come and then just like pick the babies up and take them where you want them and then let the mom, die off or whatever. But these are great for bees too. A lot of times, these have the kind of cup or foxglove shaped flowers, right? And so when they do bloom, you'll see the little bee butts just sticking right out of them, and bees love them. Yeah.
How long will those bloom after rain?
So typically these blooms will last, I don't know, maybe like 5 days to a week or
But it's
something
not
like
it'll
that.
be for a full season.
No, it won't be for a full season. It'll go away, and then the next time it rains, it'll come back.
Okay.
And also, the reason why they're called barometer bush is because they're actually not responding to the rain. They're responding to the change in atmospheric pressure that happens when it rains. So sometimes here in Texas, it happens quite a bit, honestly, during the summer, where you think it's gonna rain, and it gets all cloudy and everything, but then we don't actually get any rain. This will still bloom because it responds to that change in atmospheric pressure and doesn't realize that it hasn't actually rained.
Does this one come in whites? White blooms too?
Not to my knowledge. You can get some of them have slightly more lavender or lighter purple, and then some of them will have a darker purple, and you can get definitely different varieties, but I have not seen it in white. All right, flame acanthus. This is another excellent one for hummingbirds. Hummingbirds love it. These are these really pretty small little flowers, and it'll just have thousands of them on the entire bush. This one's another one that is super drought tolerant. It's a lower growing bush, but it'll still get pretty big, and it gets more wide than it does tall, right? So it likes to spread out like this rather than spread up, super drought tolerant, beautiful. You can also get this one in yellow. I've seen this one in yellow. I'm not sure, the hummingbirds probably are not as attracted to the yellow version. Hummingbirds really like those red flowers. And it's interesting because that's not just like an evolutionary trait. Hummingbirds have, over time, become more attracted to red flowers because we have been feeding them with red hummingbird feeders. So they've realized that the red flowers have the really sweet, sugary nectar, but that's our fault. But they they'll take sometimes yellow stuff, or they like orange, those type of brighter colors hummingbirds like. The black dahlia, this one is really interesting because it is, again, it's just like the purpurea, the dahlia purpurea that I showed earlier, where it's in the pea family. So it has these really tiny leaves, but this one is more like a bush, right? And it's a really low growing, mounding type of bush. It really likes it dry and hot. So this is another great one for a rock garden or something like that, if you like that type of thing. But it will just create absolutely thousands of these tiny little purple flowers, and the whole thing will just be buzzing with bees. I mean, if you want something for bees, you want to support bees, this is the thing to plant. And then when it's not blooming, it looks really nice. You get this nice, just kind of green, low growing bush type of thing. And again, just like the sage bush, the barometer plant that I just showed, you can get it where it has a kind of more silvery type of leaf, and then you can get it where it has a more, strict green leaf, basically. And this one can be evergreen as well. So depending on how cold it gets, a lot of times you'll get leaves on this for the entire the entire year. And there's a really cute little butterfly that uses this as their host plant, and it's really neat because the caterpillar completely blends in with these tiny little leaves where the caterpillar is green and then has just black stripes on it, and it looks exactly like the row of the tiny little pea leaves that it has. All right, now we're getting to some of the more, I don't know, interesting, maybe you would say, different type of plants, different type of flowers. We talked about this earlier, prickly pear, that's a great one. You can get it in there's a bunch of different types of prickly pears, a bunch of different species that will grow here. You can eat the fruit, you can eat the pads themselves. There are a lot of traditional Mexican dishes that use this as part of it. And you can also get different color flowers. So different species will have different color flowers. This one has a yellow flower, but also some of them have orange, some of them have red. And you can get a spineless version as well. So if you're worried about those giant spines, there is a spineless version. Now, it doesn't have the giant spines, but it still has the little tiny microscopic ones, so you still can't just like grab it with your bare hands or anything like that. But of course, this one needs no irrigation whatsoever. Great for rock gardens, great for full sun areas, and something that you can add to your garden to add a little bit of interest, right? So it's not all just flowers or traditional flowers. All right, and then lastly, I'm going to talk about grasses. So like I said, this is a tall grass prairie ecosystem, and so we have a lot of amazing grasses. So when I talk about our native grasses, these are tall clumping grasses. So this is not turf grass that creates like a uniform turf. These are clumps. And so we have a lot of amazing blue stems. There's little blue stem, big blue stem, bushy blue stem, silver blue stem, split beard blue stem. We got a lot of great blue stems. The bushy blue stem is the one that you see there in the middle. That one's perfect for things like rain gardens. That's something that grows typically more in East Texas and will help if you have localized flooding in your area, or if you have a sloped yard where every time it rains, you're not retaining any of your rain because it's just flowing straight into the street. These grasses can really help with their clumping nature. They slow down that water and allow it to infiltrate in your soil so you can keep the water that falls on your land and it doesn't just go straight out into the street. But one great thing about grasses, these grasses will create interest in your yard, and you can have it as more of a backdrop. They're a little bit taller, right? And so you can have them as a backdrop to your flowers, and they make a really interesting look. They also look really good during the fall. So these will bloom during the fall and have your fluffy seeds that you see there. And then after that, they get this beautiful fall color, right? That is more orangey and kind of, adding that look of the look of fall, basically. Muley grasses are another good one. There's Lindheimer's muley and there's the Gulf muley or the pink muley. And so these have these beautiful feather-looking blooms whenever they're blooming. Most of these, like I said, these grasses will bloom during the fall time. The pink muley is really interesting because it's pink, and it gets these nice wispy, like I said, kind of feather-like things. Lindheimer's muley is really beautiful, and these are large. These things will grow 4 foot or so tall, 4 foot wide eventually once they're larger. So these are big grasses. And the great thing about clumping grasses as well is they protect a lot of our wildlife, particularly birds. So because we're in a prairie ecosystem, many of our native birds do not nest in trees. They're ground nesting. But unfortunately in our neighborhoods, a lot of people have cats and, things like that, right, that will really disturb these ground nesting birds. And so these clumping grasses, the birds can get in the middle of the clump, create their little nest, and they're protected. And so you'll get a lot more birds. Also, the birds love to eat these grass seeds. And so if you're looking for something that will support more bird species, grasses are definitely the way to go. One time I was trying to prune one of these and I didn't realize it, but there was an entire duck nesting in the middle of it, and I felt so bad because I just scared the poor duck, and I'm like, oh no, I won't prune it, it's okay, keep your eggs there or whatever. And so this is something that really supports wildlife. Yeah.
How do you treat these once during winter? Do you prune it, or can you let it sit?
So I let it sit during the full winter because it adds interest and it looks really nice, and then you can prune it down to the ground just like these other things. I usually leave it about like 6 inches or so. So I will just like take it like a ponytail basically, right? And then just like clip it right, at now basically, or like in 2 weeks from now or whatever at the beginning of March. The Lindheimers muley, some people like to prune it into this kind of like ball, and it can look a little weird once it starts growing back. So I don't recommend doing like pruning it into a ball. A lot of landscapers do that. Some people like that, but I don't necessarily like it so much. But yeah, I will leave about 6 inches or so there once I prune it, and then it'll start, growing back. Grommas are a good option if you don't want these grasses that are 6 feet tall. These are mid-growing grasses, and so these are more like 6 inches to 2 foot tall or so. All right, 10 minutes, gotcha. Side oats gromma is excellent. Blue gromma is great. There are a few different gromma grasses, but these look really good in mass planting. So if you want something that is kind of like a mass area all covered in grass with all these little clumps and everything, a lot of landscape architects will use blue gromma for that. And all the ones I've talked about so far have been full sun, but this is a great one for shade. So if you're looking for something that likes the shade, if you're looking for something to plant underneath your trees, inland sea oats is a really great option. It won't get that tall. It spreads pretty easily, and a lot of people will have areas that are shady and they can't get grass to grow underneath there, right? And so our most shade tolerant grass is St. Augustine. So if you have an area that's so shady that St. Augustine isn't growing, you're not going to get any turf grass to grow under that. And so you want to choose something that is like a shady ground cover that can go under those trees if you don't want it to be just like bare mulch or bare ground or whatever. And so this is a great option. You get these little oats that grow on it. Again, birds love these little oats and will eat those during the fall time. All right, and then last but not least, if you insist on having turf grass, we do have a native turf grass, and this is buffalo grass. Buffalo grass will take mowing if you want to mow it. It won't take really short mowing. So if you're mowing your yard like a golf course, like 2 inches or whatever, maybe like 1 inch, it won't take that, not constantly, but it'll take mowing if you want to mow it. If you don't want to mow it, it will only get about 4 inches taller. So it has a really good foot feel. So if you're the type of person who wants to walk around your yard barefoot, St. Augustine has really wide blades of grass, and a lot of times it can feel kind of like stickly whenever you put your foot down on it. These have really thin, wispy blades of grass, and so it feels really nice on the foot. You can seed it if you want to seed for it, or you can buy it in turf and lay it down just, like in sod or whatever. I know that King Ranch will sell the buffalo sod, and I believe that's it does not take much shade. No, it likes it full sun. Yeah, so if St. Augustine is going to be your most shade tolerant turf grass, definitely. Yeah.
And how does this spread? Does it have the little rhizome things or the stones or whatever they're called?
Yep, just like any other turf grass. Yep, it will spread in that same way. Yep. And this one's interesting because it actually has a different. The male and female plants are 2 different plants, right? It doesn't have the same flowers on one plant. So sometimes if you buy sod, it will give you all male plants. And so you won't get any of the tiny little grass flowers, but at the same time, it can, over the course of many, many years, start to get patchy because it can't naturally reproduce because it only has male. So if you get it from seed, you will have both male and female, and it will continue to propagate itself a little bit more. So that's definitely something to think about if you're looking to get this to grow.
And that's this buffalo grass is best used by seed to start.
It's going to be harder to start from seed because seed takes time to grow, right? And so you won't have this beautiful straight across. I mean, these pictures were probably taken 2 months after we sodded this area, you know? So if you want something quick, definitely I would say use sod. If you're doing like your entire lawn, I would use sod, get like a whole pallet of sod or something like that. But if you're just doing an area or so, I would use seed. It's just gonna take a little bit longer to grow because, you know, seed takes longer.
So what was the shortest you could mow it? I mean, what's the length,
I wouldn't mow it shorter than 3 inches.
Can you use a regular mower on that, or?
Oh yeah, you can use a regular mower. Yep, just like any other, you know, grass that you mow.
Would it still be on the same watering schedule as the other plants?
Yeah, so it will be, yes, similar to the other native plants and definitely way lower than the St. Augustine. So when we do our like weekly watering advice, for instance, when I was talking about that evapotranspiration, I believe we do 70% of the evapotranspiration replaced for St. Augustine, and this would be on that 20 or 30%. So you're going to use half of the amount of water typically for this type of lawn than you would for a St. Augustine lawn. And also, if you want another option, the Native American seed, they have a seed mix that is called Thunder Turf, I believe is what they call it. And it's a mix of 3 different native grasses that has a little bit more variety in it, but will create a low water use turf grass that is a little bit more resilient than the buffalo grass will be alone because, you know, there's more resiliency in diversity. And so it has 3 different types of grasses instead of just the one type of grass. Yeah, back in back.
Can you drop it in like seed in another lawn and they'll bake? Like will it compete with another?
No, it will not. So it will not compete with Bermuda. Pretty much nothing will compete with Bermuda. If you have thick St. Augustine, it will not compete with thick St. Augustine. If you have dying St. Augustine where it's patchy and you've got bare ground, it will compete at that point a little bit. It won't really compete with weeds. So you need to make sure that you have a pretty clean slate before you go seeding this.
I missed what you said. You said Thunder Turf Seed, and before that, who is it? Is somebody?
Native American seed.
Native American Seed.
Yeah.
Is the company?
That's the company. I think their website is just seedsource.com.
Thank you.
Yep, and they have tons of great seed mixes, and that's perfect to go into this. There's always also wildflowers. If you want to do wildflowers, we have so many beautiful Texas wildflowers. And when I talk about wildflowers versus what I've talked about before, I'm talking about, like I said, annual plants that die every year and come back via seed rather than having those roots that stay alive underground that perennial plants do. And if you want a seed mix, Native American Seed has like a billion different, I mean, not a billion, but a lot of different seed mixes that you can choose from. There's ones for butterflies, there's ones for bees, there's ones that are like your classic, you know, bluebonnet, firewheel, that type of thing. There are some that have some of the more interesting stuff in there. A lot of the plants that I've talked about today, some of the seed mixes have them in there, and then they have that Thunder Turf mix. They also have some other ones that are like, if you do have sandy soils, you know, they have a seed mix particularly for sandy soil, wildflowers, or that type of thing.
Are these real drought tolerant?
Yes, our wildflowers are very drought tolerant, yeah. All of these will love full sun and they will love it dry once they get established. Now seeds do take a little bit more water at the beginning to establish, right? Because you've got to keep them moist while they're sprouting and everything and while they're establishing. So it definitely takes a little bit longer than planting a plant to grow something from seed. And then some of these things will continue to reseed themselves year after year. So they'll drop seeds. So like these bee balms, for instance, that you see on the far right with that tiered pagoda style of flower, those are absolutely beautiful. Bee balm is another like tea that you can do. A Monarda. This is lemon bee balm, so it creates like a lemony type of tea or whatever, right? We have tons of different bee balms. We've got some that are spotted and white. These beautiful purple ones. Monarda fistulosa, which is another, you know, sort of purpley one. But those, for instance, will continue to come back from their own seed year after year. Some of them are a little bit harder to come back from their own seed. So with the seed, if you have a wildflower meadow with seed, you need to seed it again every maybe like 3 years or so to keep that same diversity of wildflowers. Because what you'll see is over time, the ones that easily reseed themselves will come and take over from the ones that don't as easily reseed themselves. And so maybe in 5 years, you'll have just a whole bunch of the bee balm and not much of, some of the other things. But like the Mexican hat that you see there, it loves to, come back from reseeding and things like that. The one here, this is liatris. It is perennial, so you can actually buy. Typically during the springtime and the fall time, places like Lowe's will have the liatris bulbs, and so you can actually buy that as a bulb. It'll come back year after year, but most of what I'm showing here are annual wildflowers, and so they will need to come from seed. All right, and then here are just some native plant resources for you if you're looking for more information, if you're looking for more native plants. I can only talk about so many today. There are literally hundreds of beautiful, amazing native plants that you can plant. Pretty much any look you're going for. Like if you want something specific, like I want a yellow flower that is 2 foot tall and looks exactly like this, you can find it. It's out there. There's every type of native plant that you can think of. Xerces.org is really good if you're looking for pollinators particularly. So they're a nonprofit organization that focuses on pollinators. And they have some really simplified lists that are like 9 plants that you can plant that will have resources for pollinators all the way from the spring, to the summer, to the winter time or whatever, that type of thing. So pollinators are what you're looking for. That's great. And then, like I said, wildflower.org, excellent. You can go there and you can just endlessly search for whatever native plant you are looking for. Okay, and then I've got one more thing to talk to you guys about, and that is the Go and Grow Garden. So some of you may have heard of this program before, but these are gardens that are created by a company called Rooted In, and they're available for sale right now. And basically, this is a box of 24 plants, and they're all native plants, and it's everything that you need to create a 100 to 125 square foot native garden. So if you don't want to do any of your own legwork, if you don't want to go research these plants, if you don't want to make a list, you don't want to go to the nursery and find these things, you can just go online, savetarrantwater.com/GNG, and you can find these. So the base price is $85 for those 24 plants, which is really great for 24 plants. But we are offering rebates for them. And so Danielle will send you guys an email in the next week or so where there will be a link to a survey that you can fill out that basically will just ask you your order number. And since you came to this class today, you are eligible for a $20 rebate. And if you want to purchase one of these Texas Tough Native Gardens, you purchase them now online and then you go pick them up. I believe it's April 6th or April 5th, whatever this first Saturday in April is. You can pick a pickup location there. There's 4 different locations in Tarrant County where you can pick them up from. Arlington, Mansfield, Fort Worth, and South Lake. And then you purchase it online and you can go pick up your garden and we'll give you a $20 rebate. So you can get 24 plants for $65 for attending this class today. And then we also have a program for a full rebate. So we will give you this entire box for free if you are planning on removing turf grass to plant it. So if you prove to us that you've removed 125 square foot of grass to plant one of these native gardens, you can have it for free on TRWD. And so all of the details about that are at savetarrantwater.com/GNG. And you'll also get an email from Danielle in the next week with that link in there and the link to the survey if you would like to get the $20 rebate. So that's a great option if you don't want to do all this work. Anyways. Yes, so the turf has to be It has to be healthy turf that you remove. It can't be like, it can't be a patch of weeds. You know what I mean? Like, we won't accept a patch of weeds. But yes, everyone's turf should be dormant right now, and that is completely fine. We can still tell whether it's weeds or whether it's turf, even with it being. Oh, yeah, the shade. The shade will absolutely kill you. Yeah. So, this is our website, safetarrantwater.com. And if you go to safetarrantwater.com, the very first thing you'll see is the Go and Grow Garden advertisement. You can just click on that right there too. So you'll see all of that there. And if you want to sign up for that weekly watering advice, custom to your location, that's at wateringawesome.com. And we've also got some a plant database there. And then if there's not any more questions, I will turn it. Oh, is there more questions? Okay. Yeah.
Well, two actually. Quick thing. Does the inland CO do well if it gets dug up a lot?
If it gets dug up?
I have a spot on my patio that I finally decided don't put any more cement there because they keep having to dig it up to fix the foundation.
Oh.
But I'd like to have something going there, but that means that every couple of years it's going to get dug up. Well,
As long as there's something that where it can spread, and if they dig it up and then put it back in the ground, it will be fine. But like if they dig up some of it and that part dies, but then you've still got a little bit area where it can spread over, it will spread on its own, you know, over a few seasons.
And the second one, can you use leaves as mulch?
You can absolutely use leaves as mulch, and I recommend it. I also recommend using it as your organic matter if you're wanting to add some organic compost. It's funny when you see people will bag up their leaves and put them on the curb for Fort Worth to come pick up, and then they will go to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy bags of compost, and it's just so funny because that's your compost right there. So yes, leave your leaves. There are pollinators and other wildlife that are using that as insulation. It insulates your soil. You can get a giant, clump of all your leaves, put them on your lawn, run your lawnmower over them a few times. If you got a bagging lawnmower, let it bag that into there, and then you've got your mulch for the year already made. And then if you want to put in a compost pile, let it break down a little bit more. That's when it becomes your organic compost.
So it is good to break the leaves up with a lawnmower, not just put whole leaves on as mulch.
You can put whole leaves on it. That's completely fine. They'll break down. But a lot of people like the more like mulchy look. If you like the more mulchy look, you can break it down with and like the more you break it down, the quicker it'll break down on its own, right? So yeah.
I just throw my leaves on top of my plants in the wintertime, I don't worry about them.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I do too. I just leave the leaves there, and then they will naturally break down. They will naturally enrich your soil, right? And when you lift up this layer of leaves, you'll see under there, right? Like worms and roly-polies and all that stuff. Like they're doing the job for you, They're doing it. Yeah.
I need to add worms to my yard or something because I can't grow grass. I just grow clover.
Oh yeah, I would recommend native plants. Definitely. But you can add worms to your lawn. Sure, you can.
Is there any specific type of worm?
I mean, you can just buy your regular earthworms, red wigglers or whatever. Those are completely fine. If you look up online, you can create like vermicompost piles, right, where you have a compost area and you're like basically putting worms in there, so you can get your good like worm droppings or whatever, right? And so look at some of those. You can order them offline if you want, or you can just go to like Academy and go to their bake section and buy them right there. I would say just open it up and make sure they look healthy in there though, because sometimes the bait worms are not super, healthy. Not alive. Okay. All right, and I'll let you got another prize, right?
Yep. Just before we do our last giveaway, just a few things. First, I didn't even realize, because I'm so used to seeing so many of y'all's faces, that I didn't even introduce myself to y'all. I'm Danielle. I'm one of the water conservationists for the city of Fort Worth. So if you've received any of our annoying little blue postcards, they're yellow now, anything like that, a continuous usage letter, Kelsey and I, she'll be here next month, we're kind of the ones who handle that. So in a short way, our job is kind of make sure that the city of Fort Worth does not run out of water, and we kind of do that through a lot of just community outreach to events like that. We have programs who will help you fix leaks, replace your toilets, anything to get everyone involved with our cause, kind of. And then what else? If you enjoyed seeing Miss Heather Bass tonight, she will be back multiple times. So I think her next session with us is in April. Yeah, her next session is in April. I don't know the exact date, but it should be somewhere in front of you. And I think it is gardening for stormwater. Our next class is going to be March 13th in this very same room, and it's going to be mushrooms with Texas fungus, which they're a really cool group that we recently started working with. Tickets are on sale now. Well, I guess for you to grab now. So make sure you get them because this year, this has been one of our biggest class ever, and usually our first class is only like 20 of us hanging out. So we're really excited for the growth of our water saving seminars. And with that being said, we kind of need you all's help with them just a little bit to convince just some of the people that we work with that they are important. You all do learn a lot. Y'all come here, y'all enjoy it. It's a kind of a community that we've grown. So if you have anything positive to say, make sure you send an email to waterconservation@fortworthtexas.gov. Again, that's waterconservation@fortworthtexas.gov. Not only that, it also just makes Kelsey and I look really good when y'all say good things. But yeah, again, last time, that's waterconservation@fortworthtexas.gov. Everything is spelled out. And then as always, please grab some giveaways. I do not want to drag those through downtown through the basement. So if you want any extras, we have plenty extras. I'm sure Dustin and Heather feel the same way about their giveaways. So take what you like. All right, and then I did not expect it to be this packed when I planned today's raffle. So in order to win, you have to see if there is wait, let me tell you what the prizes are. All right, first we have this nice Arctic cup. You have yours. Okay, you have yours. All right, so we have our nice cups. They have a nice little slogan designed by yours truly. They're like the perfect size to me because I think the 40-ounce Stanleys are too big, but this is a 20-ounce, so real easy for coffee, anything. And then next we have the shower flower, which I have in my house, and people think I'm a little odd, but it works. So basically, this is some contraption you put into your shower, and it'll just catch some of that excess, like gray water or anything that would go down the sink. Kind of a little bulky. Well, at least mine is. I don't know the size of this one, but I use it for everything that I don't want to use, just don't want to waste water on, kinda. And it's really it really has worked. So that's what this is. If you're a little confused, you can always email me and be like, Danielle, show me how you have your setup, show me how you use it. And yeah, so now the rules. Now we know what the prizes are, the rules. So somewhere under somebody's chair, two people's chair, is a water conservation sticker. So if you can find, and again, I didn't expect it to be this crowded. Also, I forgot where I put them. Oh, there's one. Which one would you like to show? Okay. Welcome. And then anybody else find a sticker? Oh, okay, perfect.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you all for coming. Again, grab some giveaways, and we will see you on March 13th.
That was one. I think my child would be a little proud of something else in this. I knew you'd love it.